Well, Russian police have arrested more than 100 demonstrators who took to the streets to mark the birthday of jailed Kremlin critic Alexey Navalny. Demonstrators held handwritten signs calling for his release. The human rights monitoring group, OVD-Info, said Navalny's supporters were detained in 23 cities across Russia, including Moscow and St Petersburg. The prominent opposition leader was jailed for fraud and contempt of court, but Navalny maintains the charges were trumped up to silence him. Russia's government has passed increasingly tough laws to stifle criticism since its invasion of Ukraine. So, is it even possible to oppose the government in Vladimir Putin's Russia? DW caught up with a local opposition politician in Moscow.
Konstantin Kankov is focusing on community action, like this recycling drive. Kankov is a local opposition politician for the Moscow district of Mazhaysky. Every month he gets anywhere from 50 to 100 people together here to sort and recycle their garbage. Recycling is largely uncontroversial in Russia for now, though the authorities did recently shut down the environmental organization Greenpeace. Openly criticizing the government is almost impossible, but Konstantin thinks this kind of event can be a start.
Local ecological campaigns can really unite people. In these hard times, it's important to stay united and support each other. And it's important to know we're trying to do at least something to improve the world around us.
An overwhelming majority of Russians support President Vladimir Putin, at least according to government pollsters. Increasingly draconian laws have made protesting against the Russian government all but impossible, especially since the war in Ukraine started. Even a post on social media criticizing the war can mean up to 15 years in prison.
In a digital dictatorship like Russia, where a person's every move can be traced and controlled, the authorities can find out everything about a person they're interested in very quickly, if necessary. I think that right now, for Vladimir Putin's opponents, the main task might be to get through this time and stay out of prison. Taking to the barricades now is a bad idea.
Most Russian opposition politicians are in jail or in exile, but that didn't stop 23-year-old Konstantin Kankov from going into local politics just last year. He knows that the more public attention he gets, the more he's in danger.
A lot of activists who have stayed in Russia are afraid. You don't know if the police will come and search your home in the morning. Unfortunately, because of the repressive laws being passed, it's dangerous to express your opinion in public. It's all unpleasant, but we have to work in the conditions we have.
Kankov plans to continue his monthly recycling drive, and he hopes to stay in politics. Despite everything, he believes things in Russia can change.
More on this, we can talk now to Alexey Yusupov. He is the director of the Russian program at the Friedrich Ebert Stiftung. That's a think tank here in Berlin. Thanks for being with us. Alexey, how would you describe the current state of the opposition in Russia?
Well, the word opposition implies that there is still a possibility to actually be inside the political system and have a shot at power, and this is just not the case. So actually, I would say there is no such thing as opposition in Russia, except of the self-assigned opposition, where the Kremlin decides that there will be political parties that look as if they're independent. So there is a lot of dissent, there is a lot of anti-war and anti-Putin sentiment in the society, especially in the cities. But an opposition in an organized manner has indeed been destroyed completely. And so actually, it was mentioned just before by the gentleman you interviewed, the main task is maybe to survive, to stay true to yourself, so also not to be corrupted or co-opted by the regime, and also just continue doing what you've been doing before, like community action.
The political analyst in our report there suggested that the time is not ripe for opposition groups, whether they're above ground or underground, to take to the barricades, that openly resisting Putin is unrealistic right now. Is that how you see it as well, or do you see room for Putin's opponents to maneuver?
Well, if we look back at 2019 and the years just before COVID struck and actually also became something which closed down public space in Russia for a while, even before the recent aggression against Ukraine. The social discontent and political dynamics have been on the rise, locally at least. And this is important because local politics are those where the level of engagement of people with their day-to-day problems is actually the highest, and they have the potential to serve as a breeding ground for liberal democratic thinking. And well, the Kremlin was very much aware of it. And so we see that their strategy on crushing the opposition forces is very manifold. You have the censorship, you have also surveillance, but you also have the, well, deletion of public leaders from the public space, being by assassination or by imprisonment and so on and so forth. But that doesn't take away the fact that there is a lot of well, let's say, uneasiness about the lack of the idea what's next for Russia. The Kremlin and Vladimir Putin are not able to answer that question and actually avoid this altogether. And if you look at the 20-year reign of Vladimir Putin, all of the social, well, successes in terms of social policies, wealth, healthcare, relative stability, it's all withering away at the moment. So the question of what is next for the Russian society and economy will come back inevitably. And so in that very moment, it will be very important to have alternatives. And this is what it is about for opposition politicians and figures at the moment.
Yeah, I want to ask you about those alternatives moving forward, because as you know, many Putin critics are either jailed like Alexey Navalny or in exile. You say there's no open opposition left in Russia. How effective can opposition figures be, though, when they're working from outside of Russia?
That's a big question. Indeed, there is, well, unprecedentedly a very large political exile, which hasn't been the case for 100 years and even more in the Russian history. But indeed, for exile actors, it's very hard both to stay in touch with the society they want to represent, but also be credible, because it's easy to, you know, go to Berlin or Brussels and then give advice to those who are in Russia. So again, I don't think the actual purpose of those in exile is to go on demonstration or develop an alternative constitution or whatsoever. It is to be able, at the moment of fissure, at the moment where, well, the conversation about the Russian future will restart, be there and be a credible alternative, saying, look, Russia is not completely locked into an anti-European, anti-liberal, autocratic path of development. This is the actual historical task. It doesn't help that the Russian exile is very often very self-centered. Many political exiles are. This is just the nature of it. But also we have some unique features of it. At the current moment, for many people who are not personally persecuted, it's easy to go back and forth. It's weird, because you always have to fear political persecution, but the borders are not closed. And the Russian government is very smart about that. I spoke to one governmental official who told me, well, we've analyzed the experience of the Berlin Wall very much, and this is going to be the last thing we're going to do to actually put up real borders, be it exit visas or be it actual controls, because this would trigger panic and an actual exodus. So, you know, in this globalized era, this exile is away, but also not completely away, and this is a new thing.
Alexey, thank you very much for your insights. That was Alexey Yusupov. He's director of the Russia program at the Friedrich Ebert Stiftung here in Berlin.